Hey, hey everyone, this is Neill with Draw the Line. Friday, May 30th, we have a very special show in Pembroke, Massachusetts at Sounds Check Studios. In commemoration of the Toys in the Attic album, we are going to play it in its entirety. It's the 50th anniversary of the album, and this is the album that really broke the band and made them superstars. And we have a few guests here tonight that were actually there, and we want to get their insight on like what it was like recording that album, and you know what was the vibe during it, and how did it feel. And let me introduce to you Mr. Ray Tabano. He was there. Ray, how you doing tonight?
Great, Neil. Thanks for having me over here, man. And yeah, I was there when we recorded that album. There was an exciting part of, with Aerosmith. I had just come back into the band again, about a year before that, year and a half before that. I was in there originally, then I left and came back with them guys. And this was like a big deal. They had wrote all these wonderful songs and they were ready to get going. And they told me, oh, you got to meet this guy, Jack Douglas. He's like this unbelievable producer and you're not going to believe what's going on with him and everything. And so when you asked me to do this, the first thing I thought of, let me call Jack up and have Jack come over here and talk about what's going on, because this is the mastermind behind the whole thing. It wouldn't have been what it was without this guy, so without further introduction, I want to introduce Mr. Jack Douglas, the engineer producer, a guy extraordinaire, and Jack, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. I got to correct you on one thing, Ray, about when you said they had written all these great songs. Quite the opposite. They came, they came to pre-production with having coming off the road that was really intense, giving them very little time to write anything. So when they came off the road, what they had was a collection of riffs. And but I'll say one thing: they came off the road almost a year of being on the road. And of course, what happens is, there was a buzz about Get Your Wings. There was a buzz. So Columbia calls for another album right away, even though the band hadn't had time to take off and write songs individually. So they came off the road and we went right into reproduction, into production and pre-production. And each member of the band, except for maybe Joey, had some riff or some germ. Stephen had, let me see if I can remember.
Yeah, I remember some of the process when they would put stuff together. They would put pieces together, and then a week later they'd say, hey, let's go back to that thing and add something to it like that. So
well, not even. I mean, we just kept pounding away like Toys in the Attic. Okay, so that was a Joe Perry riff. Where do I go next? Brad or Steven says, da, da. Okay, now we got that much. So each song developed like that. I mean, Tom brought Uncle Salty, and that was basically a bass riff, but he had written some guitar parts for it. So it was again something for development. Let me look at my list here. Adam's Apple, Stephen had that pretty much. Stephen and Joe had that pretty much under control. That was,
yeah,
although there was no title, there was no lyrics, but there was the progression was there.
they were working on that when we were still playing in the in the ski lodges, in the high
Yeah.
school. Yeah.
Well,
So that
in '74, was there a lot of pressure from the record company to really come up with a bigger album? Because
it wasn't. It was just another album. They didn't
it's
know
just
whether it was going to be bigger or not. I think had it not been bigger, they would have been dropped.
they would have been dropped. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, then after Adam's Apple, we have Walk This Way. that was just a riff that Joe came up with. That was as much of it, and then it kept going from there. We were in pre-production almost 2 months, maybe exactly 2 months.
Working on the songs. Was that New York?
Yeah, creating the songs because
Yeah.
they had no time to do this while they were on the road. It was so. A big 10-inch we got from Dr. Demento. So that song was a complete Bull Moose Jackson.
Yep.
We brought in Scott Cushney from Toronto to play piano on it because he played great boogie woogie piano. And then we used the same horn section that we used for Same Old Song and Dance. That was the Brecker Brothers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's a Michael Brecker solo on Same Old Song and Dance.
Can I say something? I remember when Joe first wrote that riff, Same Old Song and Dance. When I heard him play that riff, and I said to myself, I said, these guys might actually be able to make it. I said, that is like a really cool riff, man. Back then, these guys, at that point, we were still like drinking Boone's Farm apple wine, and working for $125 a night. I'm saying, I don't think this is going to happen, But then when I heard that riff, I said, you know what, this guy really is onto something, man.
I think Stephen and Joe never had any doubt that it was going to happen.
You never had any doubt. No, you're right.
No. Sweet Emotion. That's side 2, cut 1, when it was vinyl. That was a riff that Tom Hamilton came in with, and when we started playing over it, boom 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 boom. When we started playing over it, Joey Kramer came in on the back beat. He came in on the wrong beat, and both Steven and I went crazy. We're like, "That's it. You're on the side of it, but that's magic." And so that's how that developed. Now I'm going to go through all these songs. No More, No More was again like Adam's Apple was a song that Joe and Stephen had developed. Again, there were no lyrics. There were no lyrics to any.
Wherever that came from, we were in Detroit. In Detroit, doing our sound check, and Joe started playing that riff.
Oh, okay, yeah, because that song was pretty much developed, musically.
Check, and he wanted to play something, and he played that riff, and Steven said, "Oh, what's that?" And they started doing it over and over and over, and turned it.
Round and Round was something that Brad also contributed to it a lot, and it had a kind of a loopy feel to it, and we knew that it was going to be kind of psychedelic. And then You See Me Crying is a song that Stephen had been working on piano for a while, and that one he actually had lyrics for. So we spent a month.
Yeah, Jack, when they were doing that Sweet Emotions, because I remember when Joe was working on that diaphragm with that little bag that he had,
bag.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back.
The voice, you're back.
Sorry about that.
We thought you went for dinner.
No, I'm here. Sorry about that.
All right.
Yeah, that was we were talking about the voice, the bag, the
talk box. Yeah. Am I still there? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
what it was today, he was working with some kind of little diaphragm. It looked like a bagpipe almost. He slung over his shoulder.
Yeah, because there was no such thing as a commercial voice box, voice bag, whatever. So he made it from a driver. And that was homemade. It was totally homemade.
No doubt, man.
Somebody on the road showed him that, but it was very cool. And of course, it ended up in Walk This Way as well.
Now, was he one of the first people to use a Talks box?
So Neill's back from his dinner, and
so no, before I left, I was asking you about if Joe Perry was one of the first people to use a talk box. I know other people had been using it, like Peter Frampton really made it famous, and you hear it in other recordings. But Was it just made? It was one. It was just made for Joe Perry for that particular for the album.
No, he made it himself. It was made with a driver,
Yeah.
and a plastic tube. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
it was homemade. That was a homemade one. But he must have heard it somewhere before. But I had never heard one until he had that one made. He made it himself.
It was pretty rare at that point, I imagine.
Was on her.
Yeah, there were no commercial ones available at that time, and not until after Frampton.
Right.
After
Okay.
Frampton, it became. In fact, he put his name on. It was a Peter Frampton talk box or whatever you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, he was selling his commercially.
Yeah, nobody really knew about putting patents and putting trademarks and signature marks on stuff. Me being one of them.
Yeah.
That's why I'm working in a fucking grocery store. And I'm only kidding.
So all these songs, with the exceptions of the ones that I said uh, were developed on the road, which were like two or three. None of them had real lyrics, and we went into Record Plat and recorded all of these songs. Stephen would be in a booth and he would just be singing sounds. He would be making vocal sounds. He had melody. So he'd just be making, and pretty soon the sounds seemed to take on a life of their own, so that certain syllables in the sounds of the vocal would give a cue to what would be a good line for it. And so,
He's like scat. And they call that scatting.
Yeah, he would scat through it, but he scat through with a melody line, you know.
Oh.
So that's how the album was. And the other thing I wanted to say is that everyone knows that on the first album I produced with them, I used two other guitar players for a couple of solos, only because I thought that would take them to the next level. Having solos on Train Kept a Roll and Same Old Song and Dance that were really, really outstanding. And we kept that under wraps for years. That there were two other guitar players in the band, and it was a hard sell to make to the band when I was doing Get Your Wings. But when they went out on the road for that year and played those solos live, Brad and Joe came back two completely different guitar players.
Right.
I mean, their chops had developed like 100%, or maybe
it was seasonal.
200%.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were playing those solos, very difficult solos. And so that was something I didn't have to concern myself with. Joe, I like to call Joe the most dangerous guitar player on earth. You give him 5 tracks, you let him play. He's going to go into a different key every once in a while. It doesn't matter, because what he's going to play, his solos. I mean, if you listen to the solo on the end of Sweet Emotion or the end of Walk This Way, those are really incredible solos. Brad was a guy who was much more trained and really disciplined player, and he had a great sound and he played really well. But you could count on him to play something and remember. If I said to him, "Can you play that again?" He could play it again. If I asked Joe to play it again, he'd go, "Well, I'll try. I'll get close."
Like Brad had those background.
You'd always get, from Joe, you were going to get something that no one's ever heard before, and that was the exciting thing about Joe. The rest of Tom and Joey were just solid.
I think some of Joe's best work, some of his best solos are like on the end of No More, No More and Walk This Way. They're truly outstanding solos.
Yeah, those are incredible solos, and there may be 5 different goes at it that we would put together. Just let him go until he runs out of steam or he goes into a different key, and then you get what you can from each of those, and and that's how those solos were put together. We'd have to say to, I mean, must have, if people are playing those solos live, they must be saying, how did he get from there to here? You know, what kind of reach is that? You know, to be able to do that. But you know, that was the fun part of it, and you know, and round we experiment. I mean, the end of the solo that I guess Brad plays on the end of round and round, we just kept slowing the tape up. So
Oh, really? Yeah.
he's going up octaves and octaves and octaves at the end on
Yeah.
those. Yeah, that's, you know, every time we would do another 4 bars, we would slow the tape down or speed it up. No, we would speed the tape up.
Yeah.
No, yeah, so it would come back. Anyway, that we were doing those kind of tricks. The other thing that is important about Toys in the Attic is, you know, that we were all so Beatle influenced,
Yeah.
and on that album, every song is got a different personality, and we would tune the drums differently. We would use a different bass. We would use different amps, you know, and we would never have like a song following another song that was in the same key. I mean,
Yep.
when you go from a barn burner like Toys in the Attic, and then you go to Uncle Salty, that's a jar to
Yeah.
hear. And those are the kind of things that you would hear on the later Beatle albums, where there would be such a color change on the next song. And that's what we were going for, and we really achieved it on that album. Of
There
course,
isn't.
the last the last song to get a vocal was Walk This Way. Everybody knows that story. So
He lost the lyrics in a cab, right? That.
I don't think he ever had lyrics to Walk This Way. It was the other songs that
Oh.
I mean, we were ready to throw Walk This Way, Let It Walk Away, because we couldn't come up with anything for that riff. I mean, we had other tracks like, you know, I Live in Connecticut or whatever, you know, we had
Yeah.
ideas for songs. But Walk This Way had such a good, heavy groove. We knew that we would have to come up with something, and you know, we stole that lyric from Young Frankenstein.
Movie. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you
Now.
kind of like put it and you made it your own. Isn't that different than stealing it?
yeah, we made it our own. Yeah, it's just a group of words, but that's where it came from.
Neil.
Now you told Jack. You told me at one time. I don't know if you want to share this, but that there was a music store right down the street from where you guys were recording, and you got this really old instrument that you can really hear on some of those songs. What instrument was that?
Well, we used
An Odoline or something?
yeah, an ondioline that you could rent from a rental place on 39th Street. There was an old fashioned rental place there. We used to go in there. I mean, if you rented a Strat or a Les Paul from that place, you would get a 55 Les Paul or a 56 Strat, because
Wow.
that's how long they'd been in business. And if you went downstairs to the percussion room to rent percussion, there would be all this percussion. And Stephen and I used to love to go down there and just go through this stuff, because they had the instruments that they used to rent to radio shows. So you know, like the Wind Machine and Seasons of Wither, you know.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So all those kinds of instruments were at this place, but they had an ondioline, which is now, that's a French synthesizer. It was made in 1948. It's a keyboard, but it's the very first synthesizer. Yeah, we used that a lot on the record, and we like to use interesting combinations. It's like when we got to Last Child, there's a slide banjo, but on Sweet Emotion, the bass line is doubled by a bass marimba that Jay Messina played, doubled dead on.
Eh,
Boom, 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 boom. People were always like, "What is that bass sound?" Well,
right.
it's a bass marimba doubling a bass guitar.
It's so cool.
Yeah, because it's got that percussion on it.
Yeah. It gives it such great attack on those notes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it sounds so cool. And you never heard anything like it, you know?
No, that's what we tried to do. We tried to always make things that you never heard before. You know, we tried to get as trippy as we possibly could.
And there's a famous sugar packet story for the
Yeah,
intro to that too, right?
yeah. There's sugar packets were something I came up with, but let Stephen take the bow. He has many times.
What
And the
was,
other thing is, the backwards hand claps on Sweet Emotion. If you listen really closely in there, there's a few things being said when we were recording them that when they come back backwards, of course. And and one of the things you hear in there is Steven saying, "Thanks, Frank."
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Frank was their original manager.
Mike Connolly?
Frank Conley. Yeah, right. Okay.
Frank Conley was their manager, and he sold them to David Krebs. I think because Frank knew he was very sick, and he
Oh.
couldn't go on with it. But Steven says, while we're clapping hands out there, Steven says, "Thanks, Frank," and it comes back in the track backwards.
Did you guys know that this album was huge when you finished it?
No.
Did you guys go, wow, people are going to lose their minds over this? You know what I
Well,
mean?
the thing was that we were recording in Studio A, we were recording Toys in the Attic. In Studio B, Bruce was recording what was his first album? The first big album.
Born to Run? Is that
Born to Run.
Yeah.
So he was in there. We would on occasion go in and listen to what Bruce was doing. Bruce and Stephen would come over to A and listen to what we were doing. We were competing. We're both on Columbia. We're both up and coming acts. And at one point, Bruce Lundvall came. He was the president of Columbia Records. Bruce came to the studio to hear what his two up and coming acts were doing. He went in and Bruce played him a bunch of tracks from Born to Run. He came in then after that to Studio A, which was like 20 feet away from Studio B where Bruce was, to listen to what we were doing on Toys in the Attic. And I walked him to the door to leave. And he turned and he said to me, "It's going to be a great year for Columbia Records, thanks to you." and it was. But he was the first one to say these are two amazing records.
What was the first single off of Toys in the Attic? Was it Walk This Way?
Walk This Way, and I had no idea that it was going to be a hit. And I was doing a record out in Los Angeles, and I got a call from a friend of mine to congratulate me. And it just zoomed up the charts, and I couldn't believe it.
It took off, yeah. And that kind of precipitated them re-releasing Dream On. Wasn't Dream On re-released in 1975 too? And so they had all this material out of nowhere, like on the radio nationally, right?
Yeah, and then Same Old Song and Dance was being played. Yeah. And the other thing is, You See Me Crying. I'd like to say a little bit about that. Stephen wanted orchestra on it. We got Mike Maneri, a great arranger. And that was like about 80-piece orchestra.
Wow.
That's a huge, I mean, that's
huge. Unbelievable.
If you ever hear, there's some places where you can hear just the orchestra. There's somebody has stripped it.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, it's just huge.
Okay, guys, we got like 3.5 minutes left of the Zoom meeting.
Okay. All right. So I think we can wrap it up.
No, I want to thank both you guys. This is I think people are really just going to appreciate the insight that you both provided to this because, a lot of people don't know what goes into making an album. And, when we go and dissect these things, because, having a tribute act, it's not like we're just like, okay, let's play Sweet Emotion. Okay, that's good. We're listening to every little nuance. And we see the amount of work that goes into, because everything is calculated and thought out. and the amount of work that went into these songs is just unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. Here, I'm gonna play you an instrument that is on the end of Uncle Salty. I have it right close
Oh,
by.
cool.
Neil, you know, your camera's not been on for the last 10 minutes.
But you're hearing my voice, right? I don't know how to turn it on, so. But I'm still here.
By the
Okay,
way,
here's the sound of an instrument that was on the end of Uncle Salty.
That's it?
Yeah.
What was it? I couldn't see it.
oh my goodness gracious.
What is it, Ray? It looked like a teacup or something.
A little can with some beads in it.
It's a
Oh,
can.
really?
It's a can with a little, when you turn it over,
Yeah. Oh, that's
the
funny.
one that's on the end of Uncle Salty on the tag.
I'm gonna be listening for that now.
This is the shirt that I wore when we were there.
Oh man. Yeah,
Wow.
My security.
cool.
And guess what? I still fit in it.
Oh, lucky you.
That's pretty good, Ray. I don't know.
Right? But listen,
Okay.
again, we want to thank you, Jack, for coming and talking about all this great stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, I couldn't do it earlier. I've been in the studio.
Now,
gotta
Jack,
go
we're gonna have to do this again next year for the Rocks album because it's gonna be the 50th anniversary for the Rocks album.
Rocks is a whole other story.
Well, the fact that they followed up Toys in the Attic with Rocks is just, it's unbelievable in itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
Because
my favorite album.
is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so great. So we'll do that again next year because we plan on doing a show for that. It's great to see you. Great, Ray. It's great to see you. And we'll see you soon. I know you can't see me, but thank you for taking the time to do this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
God bless, man.
Love you guys.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Thank you.
All right, Neil, I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
Okay, stop.